So we'll deal with the minutes in a little while. I'd like to let Mike talk first. And Mike, you're here largely because we didn't have real numbers about the fuel tank.
Yeah.
How real are these?
These are, he sharpened his pencil, and these are what he figured out after you guys found the errors in the first one.
And then Dan found the errors in the second one.
There was a second one.
I think you sent him an estimate.
Yeah, the consultant from
there was an error.
CEI, he was kind of rushed to get the estimates off to me, so, because they were moving their building and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But he came right back with the updated estimates, and this is...
Hi, Dan. Here.
No.
Yep. Okay, so I assume that you've seen this. This is the fuel
Yes.
tank, that's what we're
Yeah.
discussing. Okay, so this is all updated. It's better than it was. It's still
Yeah, I
money.
looked at
It's
where
still
some-
twice what we were hoping.
Some of the major changes were in site prep and staging. That was up 3,500 from his original estimate,
3,500 or 35?
3,500.
Okay.
The biggest
Thank you.
increase was in the disposal of the old tanks. That was up 11,000 from his original estimate.
Okay. Did he have any explanation about why that was?
Just that he was in a rush to get it together, and
And he was off by $11,000? Don't do us any
well,
favors.
he actually went over and got some more numbers from some of the vendors that they use. And another big increase was in the concrete slab and foundation for this, because it will be raised up above the floodplain. It has to be anchored with a considerable slab, and the price of that, we...
So it's a lot more concrete than you
Yes.
initially estimated, okay.
How high is that?
How high up is it gonna be? Probably it'll be about 2 feet above the floodplain, which is, or down at the pier, it would probably be a foot above the parking lot.
Okay. And this is gonna have some sort of screening around it?
Yes, it's gonna all depend on the sighting issue, because my first thought was to put it behind the pier store out of sight. That would have only happened if we were able to purchase the 3 Kendrick Ave. So now we have to look at another site. Right now, it looks as though the best possible site would be where the underground tanks are now. So we'd remove them, we'd put the anchor foundation on it there. And we eventually could move it elsewhere, but, with all the money spent on the foundation and
I just
the
wanted to make sure
anchoring.
that there's something around it to keep, vandals out.
Yeah, and the other issue was, do we want the town to be able to fuel up their vehicles there as well? I thought that would be a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, where else would they do it?
Where do they fuel?
They do it up
They-
in
East Town.
Eastham.
Oh, okay. Would they do that, you think, summer only, or all year?
No, year round.
Year round.
At Eastham, just at the regular gas station, or at
No,
the
at
Eastham, does Eastham
the
have the contract?
DPW, they have
Have
the
a-
same type of tank there.
Do we have potential savings for quantity
Yeah.
of gas purchased?
I'm not sure what the savings and the cost would be, but the savings and the time going back
Back
and
and forth,
forth.
and the
would
mileage
be
is gonna be
considerable.
substantial yet to begin with.
Yeah, and not having the cruisers and everything else out of town.
Yep,
For that
yeah, and you're
purpose.
putting less wear and tear on them, and you're
Yeah.
not paying Eastham to, yeah, no, that's probably a
Very
really,
smart.
I mean, it's
Good idea.
It's just off Brackett Road.
Yeah.
But, so it's not so far, but it's still
so it's so far, if you have to take a cruiser three
Yeah.
times a week to fill up, it's
Exactly.
still.
And then in the summer with the traffic.
Yeah, oh yeah,
sometimes.
no, it makes sense to have that in town, if we can do it. So, good, all right.
Janet,
Um,
point of information, Cumberland is gonna also provide diesel when they change.
Thank
If they ever do.
Can I ask a
well,
question? The tanks, that's for removal, is it legal to fill them with sand and leave them?
No, they have to be removed and they have to check underneath to make sure there's no leaks or no hazard to the
the
environment.
insurance company's gonna wanna have certification that there's never been a leak under there, so they have to be.
Hence the cost.
Yes, but that still sounds like a lot of money to,
Does it have to be moved off Cape?
I believe it does, yeah. I don't think there's any place on Cape that they can dispose
I
of.
think that's where a lot of the costs come from.
and I assume it's a very large tank under there.
We have two tanks there now. One is 4,000 gallons, the other is 6,000.
I can't even picture how big those are, but those are
And
big.
and the new one is a single tank with like a baffle?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's split,
And double walled,
yes.
If they do remove them and there is damage to the tank, we know there's pretty much not damage to the tank right now because there aren't any leaks. I assume that that's being tested, but if there is in the removal of the tanks, is there any liability or hazard from removing the tanks, and does that will fall on the contractor that is, I assume, removing them?
I believe so, yeah. And usually what they do is they'll empty the tank and then they put, I believe it's dry ice or something in the gas side, and it prevents the vapors from
Okay.
becoming explosive.
That's probably a fabulous price.
If this is approved, what's the timeframe that we're looking at?
Well, I would hope within a year. The underground tanks now are scheduled to, the insurance is scheduled to be renewed on July 1st.
and they don't especially want to renew that insurance.
No, they don't, the age of the tanks is making them more of a
So
liability.
they'll be very happy to hear, if they hear that this is their
Yes.
last year.
I actually met with them this afternoon, and they won't have a problem insuring us for another year if we've
Knowing
shown.
that this is the
if we're-
plan.
Yeah, if we're showing that we're proactive in replacing
Okay.
them, so.
Well, we should probably bring that up at town meeting. All right, good. Well, so you have high confidence in these numbers? You have high confidence in these numbers? Yes?
Yes.
You know, and when it comes time to actually do the work, we have to send it out to bid, so we'll get
Right.
bids from 3 different companies, so.
But we hope that this is a not to exceed number.
Well, there's that, again, the hefty contingency, there's a hefty contingency in there, so.
Or any other, no.
Yeah, that is a hefty contingency.
82,220.
Yeah, all right, well, see how that goes. Great. Well, good. We wanted to see real numbers on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the confusion.
It wasn't your fault.
It's kind of scrambled.
I'm sure you were just as dismayed as we were.
That's what happens when you add really quickly.
Okay, so if nobody has any other questions about the fuel tank, I wanted to ask Mike about the,
Well, do we want to move to, I move that we recommend Article 23, and we don't have to wait till.
that's fine. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
If we don't do this, but I mean, that's sort of around, like,
The tanks are past their useful,
Right,
their
right, so, I mean,
like, we're
yeah.
not gonna be able to get insurance.
so we can't have tanks, we can't have a harbor, so I mean.
Yeah, we can't not do this.
Right.
I mean.
This
it's
is not
right.
optional.
Yeah,
Just as dredging isn't optional.
Good try though.
No, it's a fiscally responsible question to ask, but unfortunately the answer is, we gotta do it.
and so there are options, well, I mean, basically, it depends on, we put out an RFP, it'll depend on what bids we get coming back.
Right. But we hope that this estimate, that there's high confidence in this estimate.
Right.
So. All right, so we have a motion and a second, with no further discussion that I see. All those in favor of recommending the article for the fuel tank? That is it.
Congratulations, Mike.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank
that.
you.
So before we let you go,
Still on the fuel tank there, man.
so before we let you go, I know that there's been some movement in dredging. Do you have any sense of, well, this is the question to both you and to Dan, what do we know about the process once the Army Corps gets their act together, which could be another year before they schedule this?
Well, we're hoping maybe they'll be ready to start digging in the fall of 2020. And,
The federal.
yes. And if everything goes as planned, we would hope to have the state job proceed the next year.
Is there anything that we can do proactively to get the county to buy the kind of a scoop, I don't know what the term is, for
Yeah,
the
the
dredge,
clamshell,
a shell dredge.
clamshell bucket.
So you're not depend, so that, I mean, this was a terrible situation that we're in.
Well, part of it is that we haven't kept up with it. I mean, that's really the crux of the problem, is that we should have had this, we should have scheduled, as soon as the last dredging was done, we should have scheduled for the next dredging, 5 to 8 years later.
It's supposed to be every 10 years, and that's where we dropped, the town dropped.
Yeah, and
the
it's-
last-
The county is discussing purchasing a dredge that would work here, but we're not sure how fast they'll, ideally, as Mike said, the federal government is going to be doing it hopefully in the fall of 2020. We need to be ready to go and do our share in the fall of 2021. So if the county is buying one, but they don't have one in time, then we're stuck again. So
Yeah, I'm just trying to think.
But we are talking to the county about,
We're all hoping and praying that this one comes through as it's been reported. I'm just trying to look out and say, how do we prevent this situation from repeating and make sure that
Don't they require us to put that in the plan? Isn't there, we're supposed to show them that?
Yes, we're supposed to come up with a dredge
Right,
management.
exactly.
Is that something that the dredging task force is
Yes.
gonna do?
and we're expecting like a financial plan that will,
Is there,
Go ahead.
Didn't we get quotes on how much? it
yeah, because I
costs?
remember that being like the
Because
plan for
Fred
the
was
dredge.
including that in his,
But
Right.
the issue right now is that we can't move on anything until that federal channel is dredged. If we had access to not just a plan like, hey, in 5 years we're gonna do this again, but is there a way to take chunks and pieces of maintenance of that so that the federal channel doesn't clog up, you know what I mean? A penny, whatever that adage is. If you did a little bit each year with access to a dredge, would it stop this from being such a horrible
Expense.
mess to begin with and then a
Yeah.
financial burden? Does that,
I think Mike
I
is
know that
better-
wasn't, I know Mike, that wasn't the most
Yeah.
articulate way to ask. Can we do a little something every year so we don't have to?
I think you have to prove that there is a need for dredging, so you'd have to survey it before you have any dredge plans made up. But I think it might fit in very well if the county in 10 years or so gets the clamshell bucket like they're proposing.
Okay.
That may fit in very well with our maintenance dredging program. We could use them at a significantly lower rate, and we could try to stay on top of it, and maybe every 5 years do a little section, like start way in the back, and then every 5 years come around and do a little bit more, just so it doesn't, you
Fill
know.
up like this.
Get to this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, like it has. The reason it's at this point now is that we've dredged the mooring basin once in '59. So every time we dredge the state channel, the day after the dredge leaves, it starts sloughing in, starts filling the next day.
Yep, okay.
So the key to this
Maintenance.
article on the warrant, though, is that we, the town, have to prove our willingness to come up with the money in order to get funds from the government. both, I think, definitely the state, I don't know if the federal works that way as well, so. But at least now we have some confidence that this is gonna happen. Yes,
Right around the breakwater, the sand that came from Indian Neck, does the county dredge, is there any chance of getting that to put it back where it came from? Before the federal start?
We could do that. I've asked, years ago, I asked the dredge captain, or whatever you want to call him, manager, if that would be a feasible way to do it. And he seemed to think because Wellfleet is so tidal, you could do it with your own resources, like have a front-end loader go down, push it up on the beach, and then truck it down to the other areas, rather than bringing in a dredge, and then you'd have to lay out up to 5 miles of pipe to pump it where you want to put it.
That makes a lot of sense, because it's the sand that came from there,
Yeah,
and it
put it back where it came from, and
should be a
actually,
routine thing, and we
it
should,
should be.
yeah, and if it doesn't require a dredge, that would be all the better.
it's getting worse and worse around there. The bar is building up, it's sand that would be perfectly adequate for the beach.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful sand.
All right.
And I think the town, what would be the steps to have that happen?
Well, I've actually had it in a capital plan for years, but
What happened
I
there?
don't know.
Maybe we can.
Finance committee shot you down?
Well, it's not gonna go on the warrant this year.
Well, what's the expense in that? I mean, can't you just do it?
It's
It's the time and equipment and, you know.
DPW that would come and
Should
do
do it
it.
with the front end loader that's getting traded in before.
Yeah, the last gas.
Just use it for dredging.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
And Conservation Commission has to say okay to it.
I'm gonna ask that you recognized because
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
get this.
I think that would be a good thing for
I'll tap you.
whatever the criteria would be to start that ball rolling. Whether it's filing for the Conservation Commission, I mean, I don't know whether it starts, but
So it should be incorporated in the overall plan, because this would be one piece of the continual dredging that we're gonna have to do. One is removing the sand from there, and then the other is dredging on a regular basis.
right.
But as it is now, the Conservation Commission makes some of the waterfront owners replenish the sand on their sea walls and just on the beach too, so that's in their plan, so I think we could incorporate into that pretty easily.
All right, good. All right, does anybody else have any questions for Mike before we release him back into the world? No? All right, thank you
Okay,
very much for
thank you.
coming in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just as an FYI, the warrant is going to the printer tomorrow morning,
Mhm.
so any recommendations you make tonight will be included in it.
That's what I was assuming, so that's good to know.
So do you want to tackle Article 12?
Well, I would like to, all right. I haven't looked at the actual the numbers yet, so I'm gonna catch up to you here. So 12 is the dredging. Yes, 12 is the dredging. Do we have a number that so
7,900,000.
7.5?
Yes.
So does somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we recommend Article 12 for 7,500,000 for the dredging of the harbor.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion about this? It's a far cry from the 15 that we thought it might be.
Can I add one quick question?
Of course.
15 years, are we anticipating 15 years having to spend another $7 million? And should the amortization of this be shorter based on having to overlap?
I would think.
I thought about that when I was figuring out the cost. I think we're okay with the 15 years that we're using, because we don't expect to get into the same position we're in. By continually doing maintenance dredging, we're not gonna have to do this big of a, hopefully, knock on wood, we're not gonna have to do this big of a scale of project again.
Because I just don't want to finance something past its
Yep,
use.
yep,
Right,
exactly.
okay. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending Article 12? All right, that's fabulous, thank you. All right, Article 13. I understand everybody's done their homework, and thank you so much for doing that. I figured that would, I had everybody
I saw that, yeah.
review the video, and that gives us some background, so we don't have to do that. But for for anybody who might be watching the video later, this is pertaining to parcel 17, map 34, purchase of land owned by the Hilta Trust. And it's largely a shellfishing and beach property. So, where are we since last Thursday?
So the select board has done their part of, that they've inserted this into the warrant. They're withholding their recommendation. And I would say, if I'm reading the select board, they're withholding their recommendation because they want to have all the information in front of them before they do it, but everything I'm getting from the select board is that they're completely behind this project. They're a little, I think, I can't really say this, but I think during the meeting when, as you saw probably, during the meeting when we were talking to people are a little bit, they think we need to do this, but they're a little uncomfortable with the price. That's where the problem is coming out.
All right, and I would like to ask Bob for anything you'd like to add that wasn't on that video, or if there's anything you'd like to reiterate.
It has come to my attention that there's an anonymous donor that's willing to pay $1 million to help us offset the price.
I find that very interesting.
It is very interesting, and it's not maybe public, but now it is. But
I can confirm that,
okay.
yes.
I think there can be a separation of the useless, the shell fishery aspect of this versus a bonus to the shell fishery, or being able to be utilized by the shell fisheries, whether it be private or public. That could happen, at my suggestion, and they donate that to a nonprofit.
The part that can't be used for,
Can't be used. It is a,
with whatever easements are required.
right. If the Conservation Trust is not receptive to that, perhaps the Conservation Commission would be an adequate alternative. I've heard through the grapevine that the trust is not willing to accept anything that has contingencies as a, like, driving dictated.
Right, but this has all come up so fast, we haven't
It's
really
very
had time
fast.
to. Right.
And I don't think that the townspeople will be receptive to something jammed down their throats this quickly.
Yeah, it's very fast.
I think there's a lot of
Moving
things that
parts.
can happen to lessen the load, the burden on the taxpayer, and that should be
All should be explored.
explored.
Yeah, after having watched that too, it was like there were a lot of moving parts. So I'd like to move that we reserve recommendation at town meeting pending a written opinion from town council on the sale and the ability of the town to control use of the property in question through shell fishing regulations on it without regard to ownership in any legislation by the state. Because there's also a rumor out there that the state, I don't know whether they will or they won't, but is planning something in terms of taking over the shell fishing industry. Again, that's through the grapevine, I don't know if it's true or
No,
not,
that's-
but
But
We don't have
that's what I
anything.
don't understand, is there's something that has to do with the Cutler Amendment,
Can I
right?
answer some questions?
Sure, but I have to finish.
How
so-
about, yeah,
let Ira finish.
No, so I would like to understand why the rush. I mean, you know, if you read I don't even know what this is. Is this a capital expenditure? Is this, what is this? His name's building. So
It's
what is
a
this?
purchase of land.
All right, so the charter is sort of mute on purchases of land, whereas if it was a capital improvement, you'd need, well, I mean, for a capital improvement, the charter really asks you to think ahead, to come up with a plan for it, to come up with maintenance, to come up with how much it might cost to administer. So this is sort of a blind, to my way of thinking. I'm not against it, of course, because I don't know enough about it. But to my way of thinking, it's kind of doing it this quickly is sort of a blind side. And it's sort of, there was an emergency kind of attached to it. Like if we don't do it now, all kinds of things will happen. And that's a terrible way to do business and an even worse way to manage a municipality. So I mean, I would have to certainly agree with Stephen that there's just a lot we don't know, and that's the good part. I mean, and then there's a lot that could be even worse than that. It could be silly, could be downright silly, or it could be important, and I just don't know. So I was going to abstain anyway, but I think that your idea of just withholding the recommendation is the best.
Hopefully by then we'll have a purchase and sales
And
agreement.
by the way, I'm
with some
gonna
other-
second your
Okay,
motion, because I think at this point that is the wisest course of action.
I agree. I think that was very well said, Ira, because I came into here and I came into the meeting after watching the majority of that yesterday and felt that it was really rushed. I don't have my head wrapped around it. I would like to ask Bob's opinion on a couple of things from his perspective, because my perspective is going to come from financing this from the town in this singular look, but I don't know what the impact is to the shell fisherman or to the private owner or to the wild picker. And I think that at that cost, there is some hesitation to spend it on something that I don't understand. So I was thinking when I was driving here that I think the town should absolutely have a right to weigh in on it, but I can't make a recommendation for or against without having the full picture and at least a grasp of what the unintended consequences may be.
Right, yeah.
I feel, I just had an immediate reaction of sticker shock. And it's a combination of sticker shock this year and feeling like this is just what happened last year. This weekend.
Yeah,
So I feel like, what the hell is going on that we're getting hit like this? I don't understand that. And that, you know, so yeah, my immediate is slow down. I don't even know what it is, so
well, it's on the warrant, so it's.
Why is
coming
it-
up
So-
ahead.
Why is it so emergent, Dan? Do you mind if I ask that? Like, why all of a sudden is this something that didn't, I mean, we've
So-
been talking about this warrant for 3 months and all of a sudden,
This didn't come to my attention until probably 2 weeks ago. So it had never been brought up prior to that. My understanding of the sense of urgency here is that the people who own the trust have now decided that they want to sell this property. And they have sold some of the acreage to shell fishermen who, you know, are buying the land that they work. The idea behind why the town should own this is that the harbor and everything in it really should be owned by the municipality. It shouldn't be owned by individuals or an entity. We also don't want a situation where a corporation or a large group gets together and decides we're going to buy this trust and, you know, either toss everybody who's doing shell fishing now off their grants or charge, you know, rent to use their land, which they would then own, or have some of the people who are the landowners abutting this decide to buy their section that's in front of them and say, okay, we don't, because I know I've heard rumblings, they don't really like the trucks in front of their house, that, you know, but they don't like it when it ruins their view. So by the town owning this, we control what happens to it as opposed to letting someone else own it and controlling what happens to it. So I guess I'd almost say and I don't like operating this way either. If somebody tells me you got until midnight tonight to buy this, or it's gonna go up in price, and I'll just say, well, that wasn't meant to be.
Right.
So, I'm comfortable with it as well.
It's also to support the shellfishing industry.
But that's kind of what it is it's supporting the shellfish industry, and it is a little bit out of fear of the unknown. That if we don't own it and somebody else
Do you
does.
think that the trust did this for a reason at this time?
I couldn't tell you that.
Instead of giving us,
Yeah.
why didn't they offer this 6
Yeah, why has
months
this
ago?
been going for
so-
6 months and why haven't we been talking about this for a year? I couldn't tell you what they were thinking.
I
Do
just
we
wanna-
know who the principals are of
Yes.
this
Yes.
trust?
Woody has a
I
question.
just have a question directly to what you said. You said that, so just a clarification, who owns the bottom? Does the town control the bottom? Does the state own it? Does the
So the
country own it?
owner, the trust owns.
No, not this bottom, the harbor, the whole.
The harbor is basically owned by the town.
To where?
So when we're talking about dredging, there's a part of the harbor that's owned by the federal government, and we refer to that as the federal channel. The rest of the harbor, for the great majority of it, is owned by the town. There are some people, and Nancy can help me with this too, but there's a certain way that and I'm not the expert on this, but there's a certain, like if you have property here, you own it into the mean high water mark or the mean low water mark out into the bay. So there are situations where some people own further out than just, kind of the
I
beach.
understand. But one other thing occurred to me, and that is that there's a move, and I understand that there's a move to privatize all over the country.
Yeah.
But I think it's a losing game to fight privatization by attempting to buy for a municipality. It's like if they're going to put a charter school in your town, you're not going to buy the elementary school. I mean, I think you have to fight it politically, which is another whole issue. But I'm just not sure that buying is the way to fight. The municipality buying it is the way to fight privatizing.
Well, here's the problem, we have bits and pieces of this. This whole thing came about when the Indian Neck development that was out there, this piece of property was part of those developers. The people in the trust ended up suing for ownership and winning because there was a property owner there claiming that it was
I remember.
his. And
I
they
was
went
here
to
at the
court,
time, yeah.
and that's, hardworking folks, and they won, and they bought it, they paid for it, so they do
And that's how this
own
trust
it.
came about.
Yeah.
Right, so that's how this trust came about.
Okay.
This is not necessarily a bad thing, but there's just so much vagueness to it that it's not at this point.
Jeff has a,
Kind of a left field question.
Yeah.
So if this land is gonna be sold off in chunks, what's it assessed at? And then, so there's the other impact, which is saying, what's the kind of money that we're walking away that would have been paid in the tax revenue?
So,
I'm not saying I'm there, I'm just saying.
No, I was there with you. Jeff.
I was gonna bring that up.
That was
I
coming.
think right now, the town gets close to $2,300 in revenue from these lots.
2,300 total per year.
Per year.
if
That's
you
not a lot.
look at what it's assessed at, it's assessed at probably around $250,000 for this entire property. And when I contacted the assessor and said, why is it this way? What would it look like in the future? A lot of times they base their assessment on, do they have comparable sales? And now they have comparable sales because they've sold some of these lots for $20,000. So the assessor would be looking at next year, assessing this, at $20,000 an acre instead of, $1,900 an acre.
So is that what's, I'm wondering if that's what's, so are these guys looking at getting huge tax bills?
Their tax bill will increase significantly
So I mean, that
next
might
year.
be,
It's just
That's
it's
part
just
of the
everybody-
rush.
yeah, I'm wondering if that's what precipitated all of this,
Still, the timing is,
But on the flip side of that, to the town, let's just say, okay, if they start doing that, then they start assessing it for more, and the town gets more revenue out of it.
right.
What if the town took it by eminent domain at assessed value?
You
Oh,
have to
nobody
pay- you have
wants
to
to
pay
take anything.
treble. You don't wanna do
That's
that.
always results
That's
in a
such an
legal
ugly
fight.
process, oh my
That's just
god.
not a good way to go.
It would take a long time to do that,
And the lawyers would be very
and,
happy.
yeah, the lawyers would get very wealthy doing that, and it would be,
Isn't it 3 times?
it'd probably be
Yeah.
difficult
Lawyers' guns
to
and
say
money.
assessed value, now that they've started, you know, they're gonna claim obviously that, well, we've sold some of these acreage at $20,000 an acre, so that's the going value for these.
But that's, I read the appraisal, and there's several variants of, there's the farm, the land under cultivation, there's beach.
Yep.
And there's marsh. It's not all assessed at the same time.
That is correct, that is correct, yes.
So, I hate to be operating out of fear, and the town shouldn't. So, that being said, okay, assessed value, it's certainly gonna be cheaper than 3.4 million.
Yes.
So,
But this number isn't, my understanding, that this number is kind of a not to exceed, but that we are still able to negotiate. They're not, unlike the 3 Kendrick property, I believe that there's more room for negotiation.
they want a PNS for that amount, or less.
Is there,
Last week.
would they be,
Well, they're pushing it, because they're, you said.
They don't wanna get assessed for more tax than they're now paying, so that's.
So what you're saying is that the number's really now, if we sign now, 2.4.
It's a good deal now.
I'd offer them 1.5, change the article to 1.5.
You can't do that on the floor.
Yeah,
No,
Yes,
You can
yes, you
decrease
can.
it.
Yeah.
No, according to Danny, that, I don't
You
think so.
can't
no, that
increase.
was,
You can't what?
You can't increase, you can decrease an amount.
If town meeting wanted to say, we'll only agree to $2 million,
Yeah.
town meeting has the right to do that.
and then it's up to the seller to decline that.
Yeah, it's also their kind of deal.
and we still have, and there's still, you know, we, in the, what is it, 5 weeks to town meeting?
Yeah,
So a lot could unfold.
We could learn a lot between now and then.
but it's really going to be it's gonna rush, you know? I'm thinking like, okay, once I put the warrant to the printer tomorrow, then my focus turns here, and I don't have much time at all.
No,
'Cause it's like
it's
when
not a lot of time.
you know, you contact somebody and you say something, well, let me talk to my lawyers, and that takes 3 days. You know, it's going to be a really difficult process between now and town meeting.
I would feel a lot better if we could, you know, get some agreement on, you know, on, yes, we're gonna enter into a negotiation with the town, we agree not to talk to anybody else until after the, you know, after a fall town meeting, and then we would have time to deal with this. This is just.
This is big, this is, yeah, it,
I would feel so much better, but that's not the way things are unfolding.
you know, I have a,
But you know, this decision is gonna be made by town meeting.
by town meeting,
So
yeah,
town
so it's,
meeting,
and
if
that's
they're-
what, yeah.
If we haven't made the case that this is the right thing to do, town meeting is gonna make that decision.
Yeah, no, and that's ultimately what I came in thinking, that, you know, I might abstain from it just because I would, you know, let it go to the floor and let the townspeople speak on this. I mean, we're not the deciding body on it, but I know that I feel uncomfortable with the
So right now,
vagueness.
what we have is a motion and a second to
Madam Chair.
postpone the,
Reserve
So,
recommendation.
reserve
to town meeting,
recommendation
pending a
on town meeting.
Pending a
And-
written opinion from town council on the sale. And the because
So
we
I
can
will
ask
tell
that.
you, if I can just tell you what I'm doing.
yes.
So 3.4 is a starting number. I would like to see an agreement that that number comes down. Well, I do have a commitment from somebody who's willing to give a very large gift to offset this. Then I want to look and see, is there parts of this land that will never be used for anything that could be, that I can get an open space grant, some sort of grant from the state that would allow us to help that. So what I'm going to be working at between now and town meeting is to bring what the cost to the taxpayer is. I'm going to be working to try and bring that down.
Thank you.
And
That's
community
awesome.
preservation funds
Well, they're not open for,
for this year.
yeah, for
Right.
this year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Because that's recreation. so
Yeah.
it could-
but they could purchase part of it
Do half
and
of
commit it to
okay.
open space and say, you know,
Okay, so just, let's talk about how this is going to be funded. Right now, this is what? It's debt exclusion?
right now, it is a debt exclusion. The cost is not to exceed $3.4 million.
Okay, and
And if you look at the sheet that I gave you out about the tax impact,
Yeah,
it's
that's
going to
right.
add, I think, is it $79?
Yep, 7928 on
For the first
the
one.
mean
For a
single family.
median, single-family
which is
home,
around
it's gonna cost them
500.
$79 in the first year.
And
The
then-
interest cost will go down as we pay off the principal, and I've got it financed over 25 or 20 years, 20 years.
All right, but so that's kind of, that's really not a number that, I mean, it's not just $80, it could cost $1,500.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's a
At a-
better number to really tell people it's gonna cost you, this is what it's gonna cost you.
Well,
Well,
and I can kind of try and do that for people, but I mean, what I try to say when we give this information is, that's what the cost is gonna be in the first year. We're financing it over 20 years. Don't, you know, the interest cost isn't gonna make, it's mostly, you know, it's not gonna make that big of a difference. So you can almost say 20 times $80 is what it's gonna cost.
That's
a
what I
median
was more
single
comfortable
family.
with 16.
That's what you can almost say, the total cost to somebody.
Well,
It's gonna be a little bit less than that because of the interest cost going
course.
down, but if I had to give you an off-the-cuff estimate, that's what I would tell you to expect.
It's 14 cents per thousand of assessed value. Is about, anybody can take their assessed value and just times it by 14 cents. You wanna know how much it's gonna cost you.
Well, I'm satisfied with the average,
Yeah.
my house is sort of average.
I know it's on the floor for a vote, but all the stuff that's not being under cultivation right now, I don't think the Hillbrook Trust can stop any recreational or commercial fishermen from fishing in
Wild
that
fishing.
area.
Right.
So what does that do to the cost of the purchase? If they can't, if we do nothing, the public, Massachusetts inhabitants can,
Fish, yeah.
they can fish, who owns it, doesn't matter. That's gotta depreciate the value of what they're coming in at the 3.4.
So it's a good negotiating point.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think the 3.4 is absurd, and I think that the vote, we should probably take with all that considered if everyone's had their say.
Well, I think right now we're gonna postpone our recommendation.
That's the vote
That's
that's on
that's
the-
what we're, that's
Yeah.
what's on the floor now.
My
Yeah.
intent is to work with people like you, like Nancy, like Helen, who are very familiar with the area and can help me determine what the right number is when we're talking about a number. Because there's some land that's more valuable and there's some land that, you know, one of the conditions that they've preferred to see is that no additional grants be offered on the land. Well, that, if you want to start putting conditions on it, that
changes everything, yeah.
lowers the value to the town. So we have to take into account all of those things that are out there, so.
Yeah, so, I know that you have things that you wanna add, both of you, but right now, what we have on the floor is a motion to reserve our recommendation. So I think at this point, I don't know that you have a lot more light to shed on this. So let's let's,
Can I tell you one more thing?
you may.
April 10th, the Wellfleet Community Forum is going to hold a public forum at the library solely just on this article. So we'll be collecting as much information as possible and getting as many people who are knowledgeable about this, and it obviously will be taped
Okay.
to try and put more information out there and collect more information, so, sorry for that.
Excellent.
No, that's really good to know. So we will look at this again at our pre-town meeting and see if we have enough information to,
Okay, so we have a whole, we'll have a whole
to
half
decide
hour.
whether to recommend or not then. So
That's a bombshell.
the motion is to reserve recommendation until town meeting. And And is there any further discussion, or shall we take a
Madam
vote?
Chair, may
Could we just vote on
recognize
it?
no?
I'd like to take this vote and
Okay.
get this
Maybe after.
squared away. All those in favor of reserving recommendation to town meeting? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for doing
You're doing our
homework.
homework.
I apologize for asking you to do
Assignment.
that, but,
I don't have to say
That
that.
was nice.
So Madam Chair,
Yeah, you look
yeah,
good.
because
but
I
you
know
just look-
that, I know
you
the
look
select
miserable.
board met for 3.5 hours last
Well,
night, so
I mean,
I'm so
hey.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
Madam
Well,
Chair,
that's a
may I
good
say one
thing.
thing?
Very
So,
briefly, yes.
Yes, so your attention, please. Many of the questions that were asked, either Nancy or I had direct or clear answers to. If any of you want to contact me, I'm not going to volunteer Nancy unless she wants that. Please call me, because they could have been answered simply. I have no argument, anytime you want to recommend something or not, I have no argument with that. I, however, will probably not be able to be at your pre-town meeting, because I'll have to be at one of my own.
Well,
So I just wanted to say that. Many of you have my contact information, feel free to call me, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one thing, so I have prepared a memo for the select board, which I should have sent to you.
yes.
And I have collected some other information that listening today I think might be helpful. So I will send a memo
To Rebecca.
To Rebecca.
to Rebecca, and you guys can have that. And I will be
Great.
at your next meeting if you choose to discuss it, available to answer questions.
Okay, so the next time we will meet will be at 6 o'clock the night of town meeting.
Oh, okay. I can
Unless
be there,
there's
no
some
problem.
urgency for us to meet between now and then, but I don't foresee that happening.
Okay.
So make whatever information you have available to us in writing
Mm-hmm.
in advance, and that would be very helpful. And Helen, we may ask the same of you if we have,
Well, I will-
if things don't get to us through Dan, which I expect that they probably will.
Well, I can copy you, or Dan, who has a lot to do. I will copy you with a memo, which was much more general than you need, that I gave to the select board before our Thursday meeting. The Thursday meeting did not provide all the information that was available because it was somewhat disheveled, and that's reasonable. And I just hope that you seek further information which is readily available, okay? And Nancy, I may also be much desired at the select board meeting, because we also have reserved our
Right.
recommendation.
Also, I think if Nancy gets us everything in writing,
I
it's,
think this is the
Whatever,
only
something.
issue we're gonna have to resolve on that night.
I think
Yeah,
it's the only,
we've
we've
got
got a
a
few
lot of
other
that
things that we
OPEB stuff,
reserved,
Unless we do them tonight.
which I was hoping to do. Thank you. That's where I was going next.
Basically, yeah.
One last thing, I just want you all to understand that I support this.
Yes.
I agree with the discussions that have been had, but it's very important in terms of the town maintaining home rule and for the culture and tradition of our intertidal and subtidal land, that the town have control of this piece of property and that it not end up in a bunch of different people's hands.
I think that everybody here understands that.
Okay.
It's just hitting us awful fast
I
and awfully
agree.
close to town meeting, and a town meeting warrant that's very heavily balanced, very heavily reliant on borrowing.
I
The
understand.
timing is
I agree.
awful.
Yep.
So we
It's
are
a big-
not,
it's a big
yeah, it's a
number.
big ask,
Yeah.
And it's a
So
complicated
here's
structure.
something for you.
They did not approach the
Perhaps
town, by the way.
They did.
yeah.
So,
Perhaps planning for the future, I mean, this popped into whose head?
Is there anything else out there like that? Is there
anything-
is there any other property like this that's held in trust that,
there's no other, so it's a little complicated, but there is no,
other privately held?
not in this way, held by a corporation of
Right.
individuals with intertidal bottom, and that's it. Each upland landowner has the right and has ownership of the subtitle land out to the mean low water mark or 1,650 feet, whichever is less. That's Mass law.
Okay,
So
Unless it's been
each
land
owner,
right, but
Unless
there's
it's been
no,
land quartered.
unless it's been land quartered. Now, because we have so much aquaculture in Wellfleet, and it has been here for so long, it hasn't really become an issue. With most, there have been lawsuits in the past for sure, but I would say that there is a wonderful coexistence in this town with the upland landowners, because this is such a long-standing
right.
industry in this town, and something that keeps it viable year-round.
All right, well, I don't think that there's anything you could have, that either of you could have said tonight that was gonna get us to a comfort zone to vote a recommendation on this. So this is our strategy. And we'll see where we go in the next 5 weeks or so.
Fluid situation.
Yeah.
I think I would like to move it.
Yes.
Yeah, except that Nancy said something that is generally accurate because of riparian rights, you can look that up. However, in the case of this property along the more than a mile of beach, all the upland property owners are land courted. They own down to the bottom of the scarp, including the revetments, okay?
And that's it.
And that's it. They don't own the beach, and they don't, the
Right.
riparian rights are not there for them, but riparian rights apply in many other parts of the harbor, so you were right, but in this case, you needed to know and not have that in your brains when you
Okay.
left the meeting.
I need to move on.
Well, just one thing I'd like to point out about that appraisal, that appraisal really was an opinion of value. Did you read through it? It was like 131 acres is what they carved it down to, which was the best possible use for was shellfish grants. So that's.
This is beach, the,
What year was the trust established? Was it 97 or
It was in
2000.
1999.
99?
Yeah, that's when they won the court case. They may have,
I remember reading all
Okay.
about it when it was happening.
Jeff,
yeah.
feel free to call me. The chair wants to move on.
Okay.
Article 2,
Article 2, we usually wait till the town meeting, because there's sometimes stuff that comes up.
else bring anything else up.
Okay, well, if
They
that's
were
the
told to
case,
bring it up, and if they haven't,
too bad.
there you go.
All right, then let's look at Article 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 2, transfers. It's a total of $159,000, and everything's laid out here.
Ken, what were the total legal fees this year?
that we're in right now.
Yeah, the $15,000 adds, pays off the last of the legal fees. What's the total number?
I'm not sure what you're asking, in the legal fees that are listed in this article,
No, total for the year. I wonder.
the total for the year, the budget is 200,000, and I'm sorry, 100,000, and I expect to be under that.
I'll move Article 2.
Okay, and Kathy seconded, and is there further discussion about these transfers?
This is pretty.
Pretty cut and dry, it's also a pretty controlled list, so. All those in favor of recommending this article, thank you. Great. So the collective bargaining, have we got
The
final
only
numbers
one
on
that I have a number for you is number 9, which is the communications union.
Okay,
That's 16,361.
okay, so we can entertain a motion
I'll move
to
Article 9.
16,361. So, is there a second to
Second.
recommend? So it's a motion to, and a second to recommend Article 9, the additional funds to complete the collective bargaining on the communications union contract. Further discussion? All those in favor? All right, thank you.
So the other ones will just wait, so
The other ones will have to go.
you did the dredge,
Yep, I did the
The
drive.
only ones that you have, that I have listed that you haven't acted on
The
are the
firefighters.
14 and 15, which is for the fire department staff. One is paid for by the ambulance fund,
Right.
the other one is paid for by an override.
Right, because we initially didn't have all the information on this, and it's been split into 2 articles now.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion on both of those unless there's
So
an
moved.
objection. So a motion to recommend Articles 14 and 15. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And I think we've heard from the fire chief, we've gotten all the information.
He really does a great job.
He does. Is
You did a
there,
really nice job in the preamble to the
thank you.
warrant.
So all of those in favor of recommending Articles 14 and 15? All right, thank you.
Article 17 is,
So,
this is, Jerry Hope has been promoting this idea and we're gonna try it.
right,
It's actually trying to give like a scholarship to somebody
Yep.
that will forgive if they stay with us for 3 years.
right. The chief spoke to that at the joint meeting, and
Okay.
I had spoken to him prior to that, and this is a,
I'm
this
gonna
is
move
a
Article 17.
Second.
potential tool for recruitment, so. So we have a motion and a second, and any further discussion? All those in favor? So these votes have all been unanimous for anybody who hasn't got the visual on the video, so.
The only other one that you haven't done that I have seen is now current Article 36, which is for, it was originally for the Water Resource Director.
Yeah, because that's new language,
We,
is it not?
yes, it is.
And I'm told that you've done quite a lot of work on this, so.
Well, what happened is the selectmen decided by a 4-to-1 vote to insert this article into the warrant.
Right,
But there was still a lot of questions about it. So myself, Justina Carlson, Alex Hay, who was sitting there? Hillary, Joe Powers, and Helen and myself all sat down and talked about this. And Helen had got to a certain point where she had set it up so that it was going to be in health and conservation and what she needed. But I wasn't included in the conversation, so I wasn't comfortable committing to that. So I suggested to them, what maybe we need to do is we need to ask for a little bit less money, and we need to not commit that we're gonna hire a person right away. If we can do it through, to help the water system by using a consultant to come in and help us, and probably work with me to set up a new financial model for them, and look at their operations to try and get them closer to being self-supporting. If we can do that, that would be great.
I am
And I
so
don't-
happy to hear that.
I will say that I don't know exactly what wastewater needs, and I don't know where it should be. So I wanna talk to people more. I wanna, at that meeting, Hillary was there from Health and Conservation, but the DPW director wasn't there.
Right,
And so it's like, we know we're gonna need it, but we don't know what it should look like for
and
yet.
my understanding is that we may yet be a year away from,
It's very possible.
From
In which
that.
case, we would, if we needed to hire the consultant to say how it's gonna be structured and to help us see our way through that, we would do that. But we're not gonna hire a person or a full-time consultant until we know more about what we've decided.
yeah, I just, for everybody's edification, I did a little groundwork on this myself, and that is pretty much the conclusion I came to
Yeah.
as well, so I'm really glad to hear this.
So what I'd like to do, and this is new, is I'd like to move to take no action. In doing that, according to the charter, if the finance committee takes no action on an article for finance, instead of a majority vote at town meeting, it's required 2/3 vote. So in saying that, I would like to move that we take no action on this article, so that it will require 2/3 vote at town meeting.
I'm gonna request that we don't second that.
Well, I put that,
I understand what you're saying, but it's very clear to me that there is help needed. And looking at a 1-year expenditure for whatever consulting services are needed to try to get a handle on this, something needs to
I understand where
happen.
you're coming from, but part of the planning for a budget, once a budget is decided, and correct me if I'm wrong, we appropriate all this and it's sitting there to be used a year later. that budget, final budget figure sets the bar for the next year. So part of the way you can keep things down is by shading off stuff that isn't really gonna be used in any given year. This is a situation where it's, where did I get from Helen? To get the watershed permit alone is 8 to 9 months. Yeah. And after that, they're gonna figure out how to put this plan in motion. I understand that the water commissioners are struggling with trying to make their model profitable and all that. I'm just not a fan of taking money and putting it this far in advance for something that's gonna happen a year later.
This isn't necessarily for the 208 plan, this is
It's
largely,
part of it.
it's part of it, but it's
It's all
largely
under
for
water. I
the, it's largely
understand
for
what
the
they're
existing
doing,
water
which may be
system.
creative. It's certainly better than coming up with a position like this right now. Also, there's alternative funding for this too, when they, through the Airbnb tax.
The alternative funding won't start, may not start coming, it may not start coming in until
Next
the
year.
very end, yeah, until
Right,
next year.
next
And it
year.
also we also have no idea how much it's going to be.
Right, but that's another source that we can use to start
It
paying for
is.
some of these expenses. So
And
that's why,
we may not need, we may not need to even come close to this number
right,
in the long run.
see?
But-
My-
But,
I
yeah,
don't-
but you're still nebulous about the.
But I
Yeah,
don't think
exactly.
changing it from a majority to a two-thirds vote is going to make a difference in the long run.
uh,
I mean, it doesn't, I mean, the need is there to
The
get
need
some
is
help.
there, the need is a year from now.
The need for the wastewater is a year from now.
Right.
The need for the water commissioners is more immediate.
Which needs is that?
A consultant to help them with the financial model and to work out, whatever.
So they
it-
have a
like,
financial model that's currently not working, they
Correct.
want to throw more money at it? Does that
They
make
want,
sense?
they want to throw money at a consultant to try to get it, to try to figure out how to
Right.
rework the model. We don't, the water commissioners don't have the expertise to do that.
Right,
They need help. They are burned out.
so if they're burned out, then they should get off the board and get some other people in there. But if they're
But
not,
then
if their
you've got a
financial
whole
model is
learning
not
curve.
working, don't throw money at it. And my point too is the fact that you do need to keep in mind that whatever we decide on in terms of a budget, it's gonna set the bar for the next year. So I think that
All right.
this,
If-
that's why I would
that's
like
fine.
to
If
move
somebody
to
would
take
like to
no
second that
action.
motion, then we will.
And that would be
entertain
a
a vote onto
two-thirds
it,
vote.
on it.
Wait, can we be specific here? Where are we talking?
This is the
Article
motion that
36.
Stephen just made.
So Stephen just made a
I
motion
know.
to take
Article
no
36.
action.
And in
This-
doing that, according to the charter, instead of a majority vote,
It forces a
it
two-thirds.
it forces a two-thirds vote.
So if anybody would like to second that,
The article is written kind of nebulously relative to,
Well, that's what I'm hoping the rest of the public will pick up on, and that'll be two-thirds people.
Stephen, I don't think that there's in my, I'm not gonna vote to recommend this like I did last year. I think that for all of the points that you made, but again, I think that I'm gonna not recommend it, but still leave it up to the town to see. So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm a Libra, I'm kind of
Okay,
balancing
so
between you.
is
So
there
I
a
am going to vote to
second?
not recommend this, but I don't think that we should put it to a two-thirds. And
Okay.
that's my opinion.
So do I not have a second? Just clarify.
it looks that way.
Okay, then let's move on.
All right. So, who would like to make a motion on Article 36?
I move that we not recommend Article 36.
And I second Stephen's motion to
Okay.
not recommend.
Is there further discussion?
I mean, I think that we've had a lot of questions about what is needed and when they're gonna need it. But what I'm afraid, what I see is, whatever, that the state of the water commission, regardless of even what's going on over on the sewer side, that it's running raw. And we have an operation here that needs to be professionally and competently managed. And I don't think it's just as easy as sweep the commissioners out and replace them, because I don't see a big queue of people wanting that
It
job.
is.
But you do
Plus-
have the
plus-
expertise,
Yes,
there are
we
the
do.
expertise in the town, you have a health agent, you
Yeah.
have DPW
Yes,
people that are
exactly.
supposed to
Well,
be
they're not
doing it,
asking
so
for a
you
whole
have, you know,
bunch.
so they're, yeah, I mean,
Plus we have Whitewater that does the
and there's
day-to-day
an existing
operations.
consultancy fee, I don't
But
think.
none of those
If we could get a
people,
consultant in that would give them some direction, so that when they come back to us next year,
Exactly.
that we've got some kind of a plan that makes sense, and we have it based on what other towns that are facing similar challenges. It's just concerning me that we've got a water system that really was never, went through the proper business model process to start with.
Actually, it did.
did.
it was just a
Were
faulty
you
model.
here?
No, I lived here, I didn't,
Okay,
as
so
a
we
resident,
did.
I didn't get the impression that, we'll talk about down there.
Right, that is,
It's not open now. Let's just say,
Speak to it.
you may.
So I'm not gonna try and convince you one way or another, I'm just gonna tell you what my thinking is. With the, what I don't like about our water enterprise fund now, if I look at the budget in the back of the book, half of the budget is coming from the general fund. It's not, you know,
That's why
Right.
Stephen.
That's
got that.
why-
That's been.
that's what
a
I'm
constant
trying to
problem.
get away from.
Right.
And what we're looking at doing, and I think they need help doing this, is we're looking at structuring the water rates and the hookup fee differently. So that people who already have signed up aren't punished and they didn't make a mistake by
Make it
signing
there,
up.
yeah.
But that the water rates for somebody coming on now would be higher, but the connection fee would be lower to try and get more people to sign up.
Get them over that barrier.
And so we're
then.
trying to restructure that to encourage people to sign up. And that's kind of what they need help on. What I would say about for wastewater is, we thought everything was a long ways down the road, and then the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Planning Committee had a meeting with the DEP, and they moved things very much quicker than we expected they were going to. So we still don't know how fast they're gonna move, but it could be that we need somebody as early as 6 months from now. And our concern is that if we don't approve this, that we're relegated to waiting a year if DEP gives us the go-ahead on the watershed permit. So that's what the thought process was behind that. And, you know, as I always say, I can make the best case for something, and ultimately town meeting voters get to
Right.
decide what it is.
But that's part of the reason for the nebulous
But-
word.
I know
Yeah.
that there's a lot of, but I understand, I'm sorry, Alan.
No, no,
I
no.
understand that there's a lot of issues even with the watershed permit. So we've been coming to the point of getting a watershed permit. If you back it down, there's a lot of people that are concerned about permitting the watershed. So I'm looking, you know, what I'm hearing and the way I'm looking at it is we're moving forward on something that people at town meeting might not even want us to do. And I'm not saying that from an expert, again, I'm just the financial purview, but when I hear people speak, I don't even think that there's a consensus in the town that the watershed is the right way to go. And I don't know whether that is correct or not correct,
And
I
I'm
don't
not the
have the
expert either.
information.
I'm not the
But
expert
doesn't
either.
that make sense
Yeah.
that I don't even know with what we're doing has the consensus of the town? And
But-
that's for me, and that is,
But the argument can be made that we may know a lot faster than we thought last meeting. It now, you know, we're talking that the timetable now may be much shorter, in which case we may need some
but the argument
funds
may
to-
also I can also turn that on its ear and say that last year we were looking at funding
Yes,
the same thing
exactly.
for a totally
Different.
Correct.
different idea, so I
Correct,
don't
but
think we're
not-
there yet.
But this time, we're not creating a position.
Can't the Cape Cod Commission help us?
They can.
I agree.
They
Yeah.
are.
There's
They
tons
can
of
to some
resources.
extent, but they're not gonna help us for free on everything.
Well,
Right.
yeah, but they're
But they
still
are
cheaper
involved,
than
they are involved in helping
Yes,
us.
it's-
Yeah, so I think
And
that
it's
we
not
should
just us.
There's
really
there's
squeeze
no,
them for all their work. We are paying their dues.
right, but there's no, I mean, this money can be spent there as well. It's a pot of money
It's very
out of which
vague.
we can.
Right,
Worded.
it's vaguely worded too,
Right.
which is dangerous.
Well, it's
But
dangerous, but
I'll
it
be
gives us
honest with you, I
flexibility.
did that on purpose, because at this time, having had input from everybody, I won't say what I was going to say, which is, who do I believe?
It's hard to get a grasp on.
Well,
what actually happened.
it's, you know, one person says one thing and another person says another thing, and it's like, okay, who really knows what they're talking about? And I can't say that I'm the expert on it yet,
Right.
and that's why I need to sit down with department heads and talk about it and figure it out.
Yeah.
We're gonna do that regardless of whether this article gets passed or not, because of it, you know, if certain things have to get put on hold and they don't happen for a year, next year we'll be more prepared when we come forward anyway. So
Plus,
we're gonna
And
be
that's
doing
kind
it
of yeah.
anyway.
And
Which
that's
is
sort of the-
great, but I, you know, and I'll be interested to see what might happen in the next 5 weeks, but I hate to tie the hands of town government if we have to have consultants on a number of issues.
And this is gonna go, and this is not gonna be our final decision to yay or nay, it's gonna go to the voters.
Of course.
Yeah. So,
So-
I mean, we're struggling with it, I think everybody's got opinions, and I think everybody's opinions that are for or against are valid.
Yeah.
And you know what, I feel comfortable
Voting on this.
voting on it.
Okay.
But in a lot of towns, isn't this,
Again,
Against.
wouldn't these
Yeah.
skills be available through the Department of Public Works in a lot of towns?
Yes.
I mean, when we eventually, not everyone who's working for the DPW now is going to stay. I'm not talking about firing anybody.
Yep.
Mhm.
But I'm talking about upgrading the position
Yeah, exactly.
to someone who has,
I will
Different
still-
skills.
We've just brought somebody on.
We just have a new assistant DPW director that's been hired. I'm not sure, I think he could take it on. I'm not sure he has the capacity to do it, so, you know, you might have to hire somebody to be the assistant to the assistant so that he can focus on some higher level things than being out in the field and helping when needed and stuff
okay,
like that.
I get that. And without, I mean, I'm sure that the person, man or woman who we're talking about is highly qualified, but when you were looking,
Mhm.
were you looking for these skills, or
What
was it
we-
impossible to find someone? with
What
these
we
skills?
asked is about having water licensing.
Okay.
There's a lot
That's
of
the
that.
one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we had the capability of.
And did you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't have it, but could easily get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
In response to this, what's on the floor, which is to
Not
vote against
To
this,
not recommend.
I think the 120 would be a tool. I don't think the administration, selectmen, town administrator would rush to spend it just to get rid of the money. I think they've got the county commissioners. It just gives them a tool to kind of,
Tap the resources we need when we need them.
right, exactly.
Contrary to what this warrant looks like, I don't like to spend money. I like to be
I know you
very
don't.
frugal,
Yeah.
you know? And you're right, it's not, I'm not looking
You're
to
not gonna rush
spend
out
this
and
money
spend.
on July 1st.
Right.
We're gonna have to sit down and we have to figure out, because exactly what you just said, is this something that we could do in the DPW department and do for a lot less than hiring a staff person or restructuring a little bit? All those answers I don't have right now.
You just said that the big problem that the Board of Water Commissioners are having is with planning and looking ahead and trying
Yep.
to get the fee structures. The person at the DPW is taking care of the technical aspect of this. So it's really planning is what they're looking for. They want a consultant to help them to figure out how to make their financial model work, right? It's not
Yes.
about having somebody having a water handler's license.
No, because right now we use Whitewater to do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, you know.
They're not looking at duplication.
Right, but they do have to have, definitely have somebody on staff, and it should be for the DPW.
Right.
Because it is a public works project.
Right,
The Board of
we're not
Water
looking at.
Commissioners-
We're gonna get more
the
users
water
on the
department.
systems, really, what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
You know, the best part of that, affordable housing project would be
Is that
how
it's
many
gonna
people
bring
are
on,
plug
it's
into
gonna bring
it.
on some new
So-
users.
I mean, that's the whole key, is you gotta have enough users, and if this will give them, we have some good people that have come in here, you know, shared with us what they're trying, and we can see their frustration. And I just don't wanna, I want them to be able to continue this moving forward. I don't think we're gonna rush out and spend the money. I don't think we could find the person that we're looking for.
That's not my point. My point is you wanna keep in mind, each year, we're setting the bar for the next year when it comes to budgeting. 120,000, if it's not gonna be
It's
used
just the
right away,
authorization to borrow, it's not saying that we're
it's
going to
still part of
borrow
the
it.
budget.
What Steven said is basically correct, because when you have a baseline of what Proposition 2.5 is, and you add to that unless it's a capital exclusion, which is only for 1 year, or debt service, which goes away when it's paid off, if you do it as an override to pay for something like this, it gets added to the base. Now, I would argue on that perhaps we could wait a year, but then it will be added to the base next year.
That's fine.
So-
You've got an actual need, you've got somebody using that money then.
So you don't have to spend up to the levy ceiling.
No, no.
You can always spend
Yeah,
below the
and this year
levy
we will have an excess levy capacity,
Mhm.
so.
Has everybody read their levy handbook recently? It's really interesting to find out the sort of nuts and bolts about what we're talking about. It's an interesting primer.
Do you have a
I mean,
copy?
I read it every few years and say, oh, that's what
I
we're
don't
doing.
even know if I have
Do you have a
it.
copy?
I can email
I have
it
the
to you.
finance committee handbook, is it in there?
No, I can email it to you, it's a PDF file.
Okay.
So
I love
in light
Okay.
of your
Yes,
response
yeah.
to his
Okay.
motion,
Might be
it
good.
would be better to have a different source of funding for this article?
You know, I would tell you that next year, we may be able to change the source of funding. I still would like to see this go forward this year. Next year, we'll know how much we're going to have in room occupancy tax.
Mhm.
We'll know how much we're gonna have in the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund.
There's another-
We're gonna know more information that we don't have right now.
It
I would
sounds-
still like to see this go forward this year, understand if you don't want to. But next year, we will have alternative sources of funding that we could actually do some of this with.
So I have a question for you. Is there any possibility that you could find half of this amount in?
Sell a few oyster grants,
And
sell
not
3 of
have
those.
to,
Sell 3 of those
is there any
grants.
chance that we can lower the borrowing amount and still get you up to that
So
total
recommend
of
half of it.
20?
You can do whatever you want. So it could go to town meeting and you could make a motion to make this for 60,000. So that if I'm looking at something that I wanna do for the whole year, okay, I can't start until January 1st instead of July 1st. So you,
Unless
you
you
know,
find the money
Yeah.
in free
Well-
cash or something.
but it always depends on what town meeting votes.
Right.
So whatever town meeting says, that's what my marching orders are. I can't change the vote of town
Right.
meeting,
So
even
we're
if I find
starting
money
with it, and it's
somewhere.
gonna go to a vote. It's
Right.
gonna go
How
to
did you
town.
come up with the number 120,000?
Darts, I think. That's how I do it in my house.
You're not helping.
But thank you for the levity, I think we all needed that.
What I looked at is I looked at a maximum of $30,000 to help the water system set up their structure.
Right,
And then I looked at 90,000 for, I looked at it as a consultant for perhaps 30,000. And then if I had to hire somebody to be able to do something,
Half a
it would be
year.
in the second half of the year. So it would only
I see.
be, you know, something like a $60,000 expense.
okay. All right. Right now, we have a motion and a second to not recommend Article 36. Is everybody ready for the vote?
Please explain beforehand what a yay and what a nay means.
A
Right,
yay
don't
means
say
that you do
present.
not recommend this article. And nay means that you do recommend this article. So it is backwards from the normal.
The bizarro world.
So,
And present doesn't get a vote.
let's try this. All of those in favor of not recommending this article, please raise their hands. That is 2. All of those in favor of recommending this
I think you gotta-
article.
Wait a minute, you got it
I'm
backwards.
sorry, all of those,
So now you need to.
In favor?
all of those
Somebody-
opposed to not recommending this article.
No,
No.
that's a double negative.
Well, no, it's not in this case.
So
No,
now
it's
you
not,
gotta
there she
vote
goes
for
again.
recommendation.
So you vote for it.
So,
the two to
I am going to put forth a motion to
You changed that last
recommend,
motion?
to recommend Article
I second.
36. And do we need to have a discussion about that?
No, I don't think so.
This
Okay.
math better turn out right, Jan.
Okay, so all of those in favor of.
Did you have a second on that?
Yes, Linda.
Okay.
All of those in favor of recommending Article 36, and that
A
is
maximum of
5.
120,000.
And all of those opposed, that is 2, okay, and that's the same
That's
count
it.
either way, so we're double checked on that. So you don't have to put any weird language
No,
in
I won't.
the,
Not
in the
like the
warrant,
gas tank
since
budget.
we've just
It's a gas tank.
done that both ways. All right, at least we're consistent.
And you will be involved in any, if this passes at town meeting, you will be involved in it all along the way, so,
Now, does this go to the ballot too?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
See,
Yeah,
just strike it down.
I'll just contact all my peeps.
We don't need to have that discussion here.
So here's something for the Board of Water Commissioners, with this new Airbnb
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Are they approaching the Board of Health with some sort of regulation, and then homes that are part,
To my
Okay.
knowledge,
that's
no.
gonna be required to
Because
have
what
that?
I've asked so far about, are we gonna regulate locally?
Mhm.
I'm not, it's been a negative response. So some communities like Provincetown, if you have a rental property,
Right,
if you rent out your home, they require you to get a rental certificate.
right.
It's, so far, it has not been the
Requires,
intent here. But the state does have a registry that if you're going to rent out your home, you have to participate in their registry.
Well, I'm just thinking in terms of hooking up to a public water supply system.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any?
I've heard
room
very
there
little
for-
talk about it.
That's an interesting
Yeah.
From the Board of Health?
There are,
Because
just as a
in the Board of
factoid on
Health,
that, there are increased homeowners insurance liability policies mandated for people who will rent their homes privately.
Right, it's a $1 million liability.
Yeah, it's a $1 million
Yeah.
liability.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like an umbrella, slip and fall umbrella.
Right, if you're gonna rent your place,
If you're gonna rent your place, you gotta have that.
Are
insurance.
there
I have that. in mind.
properties in the central district, because it has access to town water,
See, that's what-
that may be buildable, and they don't have to go with the
In
separation
the
of
central
100 feet?
district?
Well, in the district that has water, town water. So it may become a buildable lot because it's town
I'd
water.
have to look at it, I'm not,
I
haven't
think-
ever seen that.
The
Good question.
lot sizes, I think, are determined by zoning, not water availability.
You still have to meet all the setbacks.
I don't think there are any buildable lots left in the central
That's a
district.
good question, Bob.
But we have water service available to approximately 250, 260 people who are not hooked up right now. So we don't have to lay any more main, we don't have to do anything, all they have to do is say, I wanna hook up. The only problem is right now is our hookup fee is $6,000, and then you have to hire your own plumber to bring it into the house and do all of that.
Which is-
So it's kind of a prohibitive expense, so
Yeah,
we're
that's
trying
very
to find a way to make that more affordable for people and spread it out over a number of years, while not punishing the people who have already signed up, to try and get
Already
more
hooked
people to
up.
hook up, so.
Yeah. So
I moved the minutes.
I actually wanna ask you a question about the
Can we get
minutes.
them out of the way?
Yeah, I would like to, but I do, all of the minutes that involve votes on warrant articles, I would wager, I would put money on most of those warrant article numbers having changed.
Agreed,
Yep,
since the first time you started doing it.
We are, since we went by by article number, we're gonna have to somehow reconcile meeting minutes to the current warrant.
Can you just put warrant as of date and reference those?
Unless all of those drafts are gonna be archived with, you know, it's gonna be hard for
All the
anybody to go back.
misspellings?
I think it would be easier to reconcile the minutes.
Okay.
I
To
can
file
actually help
warrant.
Rebecca with that, because if you had had minutes on a certain date, I've got on my computer
Right.
what the current warrant was at that time.
And there's
So that-
information on the minutes about what it is, so
Yeah.
it should be easy. It should, I mean, it's gonna take a little time.
Because
But-
as soon as we inserted the trust article and dredging, every number after that changed.
The good news is that there were a lot of meetings where we didn't vote on anything, but we may have referenced articles by number. So I apologize for making work for you, but so that said, other than that issue, I think we have a motion. Do we have a second to approve the minutes? Second. Is there any discussion? So, all those in favor of approving the minutes with the caveat that this and other minutes on
We're
which
just
we
gonna
have
do an
votes
audit of previous
will
minutes.
need to be
Yeah.
reconciled with the final warrant.
I can have
Um,
those done by your next meeting,
Okay.
if not sooner.
Honestly, I don't think I'm leaving now.
Well,
She's a good and she's a great baker.
nice. Okay, all those in favor of
To that I would say prove
minutes?
it.
Thank you. All right, so- You can't, you,
Great and appropriate.
oh, do we have a change, or it's just a type
Raise
wrap?
inappropriate.
Raise it. That's the baking thing.
Yeah. Your bacon's coming.
This is inappropriate.
Is there a difference between baking powder and baking soda?
Yes.
Oh, God.
You're dismissed.
One's
And that-
with vinegar, one's acid.
Okay.
Let's not, that is not an issue for finance, you can look that up,
That was like a softball for you guys.
okay?
I know.
Short answer, yes.
So now there's a.
Okay, so strategic planning, we're,
I think
I'm-
that's a misnomer in this town.
I
There is no
work-
strategy.
I'm
You know
doing
what,
some,
that's-
I'm doing,
Thanks
just,
for bringing that up, because
May
I think that we need to ask the
I mean-
Board of Selectmen.
Honest to God, no, let me just speak for, I'll promise to keep it to 60 seconds.
okay,
According to the charter, the selectmen, according to the charter, the selectmen are the chief planning body in this town. And so that would assume that they have a strategy. Every year before town meeting, we get, as you said, we get thrown these enormous expenditures for no reason at the last minute. That does not tell me that there's a strategy. So a strategic plan is a misnomer. We'll take that up with
it
Fred.
may not be the best term, but what it is basically a financial heads up for the
Okay,
voters. And just FYI, I'm working on it sort of in conjunction with Fred, I'm gonna try to handle the wording while he handles the numbers, but we think that this year it's gonna make more sense to hold off on finishing this report until after town meeting, because so many things are moving this year. And, late breaking information, all of that, so.
It might consider making
We
it a
will get it
strategic
done.
plan.
I think we should still put through
If I didn't have orders for,
So at least you can give, because the nice thing about it was letting everybody know what to expect with regard to the Nauset Regional High School, when that's gonna happen.
I think
Big
those
ticket items, the
timetables
timetable.
have been fairly consistent, but, I'll get together with Fred and and I'll talk to him about whether we can at least have those
Well,
available.
I don't think it's us,
Jeff.
honestly.
I think that our strategic report ought to point out exactly what Ira just said and some of these issues. That as far as we should be doing some type of planning, but that the recent experience has been that we are not. And I think that that's something for us to report.
Well, I would appreciate if the two of you would put together
A sentence?
a paragraph,
Use a sentence.
a paragraph
Sure.
to that effect that we can insert into the report, because.
Because I think we all believe that there is a real
Vacuum.
benefit to having a strategic plan, and plans are designed to be
Well,
changed.
the point is that the charter calls for planning.
Yeah.
Right,
It
but
actually
And
mentions.
the and the
perhaps we
responsibility
ought
is the
to-
Board of Selectmen.
right, so perhaps we ought to look at calling this more of a financial, crystal ball game.
Anticipated financial needs.
A financial, a picture of what we know now about what's coming up, however we wanna word that, but, the word, I understand why Fred calls it a strategic plan, but you're right, it does
That's his-
confuse
that's his
the
charge.
issue with the sort of planning on a town level that ought to be done by the governing body and not by a
I
fiscal.
think when we talked about this when I came on the board, that it was just, the way that I kind of remember this coming about was that we're looking at these budgets singularly with people on one day or 2 days when they come to town meeting and we have the experiential knowledge of being in here, and I think it's nice to, it was a nice thing to kind of say, hey, when you're voting for this, remember, we might have to vote for this later, so that you can get a broader picture. I don't think it needed to, I mean, it was nice to know and inform voters what we anticipate is coming down the road as a financial committee.
But we also, this year we have an additional tool, which is that we have recordings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I think this is
that's
great.
very good.
I think
do.
it's, I think
I'm very
it's
happy
probably
about
the best thing we could have done as far as opening up our discussions. to
Didn't
people.
change my attire.
What would?
As long as all
Give us a hint.
as long as all the
What
naughty
would?
bits are covered, we're good.
But I agree that strategic
for us.
planning seems like a broad, like we're.
Right,
Yeah. and-
right.
Well, it's
And
the
it's
plan-
not- and it's
our
not technical.
strategic planning, not the town's strategic
yeah.
planning.
It's a strategy for planning the spending. It's
And
all it
also
really
letting
is.
people know what's out there.
Yes.
Anticipated
Yeah.
Instead of
expenditures
coming to
that
town
aren't gonna
meeting going,
be, yeah.
what? I didn't
Right.
know about this.
15
At
million
least
for the
you can
dredging,
say, well, you know.
We
2
tried.
years ago,
We've done
Say
good.
like
We
maybe
said
they
we were
agree.
gonna see
Well,
this.
between that report and these recordings, we are giving people
Yeah,
really all of the
exactly.
tools we can.
It's true. You're gonna put music on this, right, Tom?
You bet. What's your
Okay.
favorite tune?
Give it up, money, 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 money.
So,
Let's just try to get this squared away, Bob.
we voted down the 3 Kendrick Ave.
Thank you. I was just
That's
curious
off the
about
warrant.
It is?
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
that. And what's
The,
going
on, the meeting on March 19th, which I think is a Tuesday, and Selectman Hauk voted to insert the ballot question, because we had to get them done that week. He had voted to insert the ballot question. It needs to have a 2/3 vote, which means 4 selectmen have to vote for it. And the vote was 3 to 2 in favor, so it failed. So, because the ballot question wasn't on, the warrant question wasn't either.
Thank you.
on?
So that is now a moot issue. I actually knew that and I neglected to do it too.
I just wanted to know what the current thinking was for the selectmen.
Yeah.
They no longer have to think about it.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's a
Are
perfect.
there any liaison
perfect
reports?
No.
Is there any other business that anybody wants to bring up?
So
Future concerns?
we're meeting before town meeting.
We,
is
yeah,
that
well,
right?
yeah, so we're gonna need to reserve the library at the elementary school for 6 o'clock on the night.
I'm sorry.
Town meeting starts at 7, so
Yes.
we usually meet for 20 to 30 minutes at 6
Mm-hmm.
o'clock the night of.
6.
And the committee secretary has always brought a cake each year.
We all listen to it. Okay.
You're getting cake on Friday.
I don't tell you, I get so excited when the town council drops their candy off.
So, yeah, right? I just wanna let everybody know that, so traditionally we have a reorganization at the first meeting after town meeting. So I want everybody to think about who the next chair is gonna be.
I know who's the next year.
Fred
Who I want.
McKay.
I am going to,
Who's
let somebody
missing?
else take that
Fred.
burden after this. It's 2 years is
Fred's
enough.
not here.
We nominate Fred McKay.
We cannot, we can't nominate anybody at this meeting. It has to wait
Voluntold?
until,
I hope he sees that.
it does make sense, but we need to, if anybody else is
We'll
interested.
find out if Fred watches to the very end.
I'm not permitting any nominations or
The king
voting
needs
at
to
this
say
meeting.
congratulations, Fred.
The meeting, right?
All right, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.